What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by the host of One Man Boot. In my opinion, the best up-and-coming analyst in all of mixed martial arts media. That is Harry Powell. Follow him over on Twitter at BJJ_Harry Powell. I need to get you to change that. Yeah, it's BJJ_Harry Powell. No one will find you there. But anyway, find him there. You will find him there. And follow along with him because he has some of the best analysis, I suppose, of anyone in the game today. Would that be fair to say, Harry? Are you going to big yourself up here before we start?
Absolutely not. I mean, I said this to you last night that there is a method that you have to sum up things in such a succinct but comical way. And I'm there like trying to fit in fucking 256 characters because I can't fucking say what I'm trying to say in one line. So yeah, I really appreciate your analysis, and there's far better than me. But for those lads, I'm coming.
That's what we are. I think we're a good combination because I'm the one sentence and you're the 1,000 sentences. So if you put the two of us together, we have a good combination, I suppose, in the middle. What we're doing here today and what we want to talk about, it could go off into many different places, but obviously UFC 276 went down over the weekend. And the main thing I want to talk about today is Israel Adesanya and that performance and the, I suppose, juxtaposition between an unbelievably good technical, tactical performance and entertainment. Now, I will start at the start and say I am on one side massively because I was sitting there at 17 minutes past 6 in the morning or whatever it was on Saturday night, and I was not in the mood for a feint fest. I was not in the mood for 100 jabs that almost all miss. I was not in the mood for that sort of fight. And we'll start off by saying that. But overall, first of all, do you think there is a responsibility there for a fighter to entertain? Do you think there's a responsibility at any stage? You know, there's certain fights, okay, you have to go into, like if you're fighting Wonderboy and you're Woodley back in the day, no one's expecting Woodley to entertain. They're expecting him to win in whatever way he can. Or if you're fighting a Dagestani wrestler, if you're fighting Habib, or you're whatever you might be, if you're fighting McGregor, you want to wrestle him, whatever. People understand that. But is there responsibility at some stage of your career or at an overall kind of feel in your career that you should entertain as well as being technically really good?
That's an incredibly nuanced question. And it's a question that I can only answer from my own perspective. But I think I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here because, you know, if you've listened to any of the stuff that Sean and I have put out, both of us are championing for, you know, the fighters being the most prominent thing. And, you know, we understand how poorly they're treated in a variety of different fashions. But when you're Israel Adesanya and you are supremely skilled in one aspect of mixed martial arts, and you go in there with an opponent who is inferior to you in most of the facets of the game, I think as a martial artist, and we must remember that at the root of martial arts, what we're looking to do is dispatch of an opponent in the most efficient and clinical fashion. From a martial arts perspective, I think that Israel Adesanya has a responsibility to go out there and prove the excellence of his skill set. From a sporting perspective, he has absolutely no responsibility whatsoever to go out and do anything but win. Something that you and I do all the time is we talk about comparisons from MMA to football, right? Jose Mourinho built an illustrious career out of going out, scoring a goal, and then shutting that game down and absolutely not letting their opponents come anywhere near them. Israel Adesanya, for the first 2 rounds of that fight, in my opinion, essentially blew Cannonier out of the water, had him biting on every feint possible, landed enough to win the rounds, and did so in my opinion, from an analytical perspective, a really beautiful fashion. The next 3 rounds, though, were tough, were very tough watching. Now, You're on the side, heavily on the side, and we heard this morning. If you haven't gone and signed up to the Patreon, go and sign up to the Patreon. You get early access to the podcast.
It's up for free. Don't worry. It's up for free in SevereMMA, but this is Sherdog. We better stay away from SevereMMA for a while. Go on anyway. What are we going to say?
Understood. You were heavily on the side of entertainment, right? And I'm with you. I'm at 6:15 in the morning. I hadn't slept all day. I was up at 8 a.m. It was a long old day. But the analyst in me.
I did that the other day as well. I kept saying analyzation. I was like, is that a word? I think it might be. I
don't even know at this point, Shawnee. I don't know. The analyst in me loved those first 2 rounds. And I was searching in the last 3 rounds for something. But it just felt like Israel had made a decision that he couldn't find the left high kick. The right high kick wasn't there. So therefore, he was going to coast the last 3 rounds and not really let Cannonier do anything. But he was going to accept the grappling exchanges. He was going to accept the clinch exchanges, knowing that Cannonier wasn't landing damage. Israel was landing tiny, pitiful pillow slaps in the clinch. And that overall, the leg kicks and the jabs and maybe a right hand here and there was going to win him that decision. From a martial arts perspective, I don't like that. Israel is and was, we saw in those first 2 rounds, the far superior striker. Go out and show it. You can't say pre-fight, I'm here to put on a show. I need this main event slot. International Fight Week, the biggest card of the year. I am the main event and I'm going to prove to you why I'm the showman. And then give us those last 3 rounds. But from a sporting perspective, he did exactly what he needed to do.
100%. Now, I think you're right in everything you said there. And one thing I would say as well, Israel Adesanya should not give one toss about what I think sitting at home at 6 a.m. And, you know, I'm obviously going to speak from my point of view. And if I don't like a performance, I'm going to say I don't like a performance. And I don't. I did not like that performance. I thought it was terrible. And we'll get into more of that in a second. But I think, you know, and I say he's no responsibility to me, no responsibility to you, no responsibility to any of the fans individually. But you know what? He does have a responsibility to himself. And from a martial arts point of view, as you just spoke about there, I wouldn't know much about that, but I would say what is martial arts about? It's about getting the best from yourself, performing the best as you can. Did Israel Adesanya get the best from himself on Saturday night? Did he perform as well as he could? I don't think so. And we'll get into that again in a second. But the other part of it as well, from like the entertainment point of view and from the draw point of view and from the fame, and which he loves, and I wouldn't say this about most people, because most people aren't like Adesanya or an O'Malley or a McGregor or whatever, and love and try to be, you know, a star as well as a great fighter. A performance like he gave against Jared Cannonier is not a star-making performance. It's the exact opposite. Like, I had people literally tweet me, and it's a load of shite as well a bit, but they were saying, I'm never going to buy an Adesanya fight again. Why would he ever be on the top of a card again? And you know what? I know it's not true, but I wouldn't blame them. Like, I would not blame them for not buying one of his fights again. Because the biggest problem is, right, I love in MMA, when Jose Aldo lost his title and he went down, and look what he did to Jeremy Stevens. When there's like a small fall down from the greatest in the world fighting the near greatest in the world. Look at Volkanovski, 3 close fights with Holloway-ish, goes and fights Chan Sung Jung, blows him out of the water. The problem at middleweight is there is no one like Adesanya. And he's not blowing any of these lads out of the water, apart from Paulo Costa, who is so bad he couldn't not blow him out of the water. There's lads like Cannonier is night and day underneath Israel Adesanya, and he can't even make it an entertaining fight over 5 rounds when he's beating him. Like, from his point of view, a martial arts point of view, that can't be fulfilling. From a fan building point of view, that is not good for him as a star, as a money-making star. And just from, if he wants to be the top guy in the sport, pound for pound, people were talking about Volkanovski on Saturday night being the pound for pound. No one was talking about Adesanya. Why? Because he beat a completely inferior guy in the most boring way possible without like seemingly even opening himself up. It was that 1-0 win you talk about when he could have won 7-0. And that kind of, you love a fighter. You love a fighter who leaves it all out there. Not necessarily leaves it all out there in terms of they take loads of shots and they go in. And I'm not telling them to go in and be stupid or anything like that. But there's some great fighters with they wouldn't have half the ability that Adesanya does, and they go out and they leave it all out there, win or lose. It just feels like Adesanya is not leaving half of his ability out there, and he could do. It feels like he could do it in a way that would still keep him safe, that would still make him dominant, but that would make him exciting and likable as well. I think Adesanya is one of those guys, he's like Marmite, you either love him or hate him. I actually really like him sometimes. In other times, like at 6 a.m. on a Saturday night, I don't like him. But I just, what do you think about that responsibility? Like the responsibility to be a star, I suppose. It starts with the fights. It's always with the fights. People always said about McGregor talking and having the country behind him. If he didn't go out there and knock out Chad Mendes, knock out Jose Aldo, have that 11-month period he did with the Nate Diaz fights and all that, he wouldn't have become the star he became. Adesanya, these performances, they are not star-making, are they?
I don't think they are star-making. I think that a good comparison to make also is Kamaru Usman, right? Kamaru Usman, a fantastically dominant fighter, right? Incredibly dominant. If he takes you down at the start of the round, the likelihood is you're not getting back up for 5 minutes. Even he himself, after winning the title, openly and publicly spoke about, I need to add finishes now. Finishes are what the fans want to see. Now, there is a question. There's a couple of questions. The first question is, at the philosophy, the base root philosophy of what fans want, is it excellence and dominance? Because if it is, Adesanya showed that in the first 2 rounds. Or is it excellence and dominance leading to a finish? Because I think it's the latter, right? At the cream of the crop. Because, if you see lower down the card, there's some wars, there's some scraps. Brian Barberina, Robbie Lawler, right? Very competitive fight for the most part. Lots of blood, lots of guts, lots of war, lots of attrition. Fans love that for the visceral nature of things. And I think that is one spectrum of things that fans are looking for. The other side, when you used to go and watch an Anderson Silva performance, and I know that Israel doesn't like those comparisons, you go and watch a John Jones performance, you're seeing excellence, dominance, but you're seeing both of those things leading to a definitive finish. And I think for Israel Adesanya, the responsibility now is to do those things, right? He came out last night and said, look, I just had an off night. My jabs were working well. I agree with him. The leg kicks were landing well. I agree with him. But I just wasn't able to find my power shots. Fine. Every now and again, every fighter goes out and they have a bad night. Something we must, as the MMA media and the fan base, understand, and I know that, I'm not talking to you specifically, I'm just talking globally, is these fighters, again, if we make the comparison to football, these fighters go out once every 6 months, most of them, and they get judged on 15 to 25 minutes of performance. If Luke Shaw or Cristiano Ronaldo or Paul Pogba goes out and has a bad 90 minutes, 6 days later, the boots are getting strapped again and they get to go out and prove and they can have a fantastic performance. So the rhetoric can change incredibly quickly. So we must give some empathy and room for just having a bad night. But to your point, Marvin Vettori, although he made adjustments later on in the fight, was schooled on the feet. Absolutely schooled on the feet. Do we think Israel could have got him out there? Probably. My question to you is, do you think that the lack of level of competition is something that Adesanya is struggling to get up for?
Maybe. But maybe that is it. But what if that is it? It's still leading to these. I saw someone using the word lackluster performances, and they're not that. They're actually not that. It's lacking the X factor, and it's funny because Adesanya has the X factor, and he just doesn't show it often enough. He showed it early in his career, but as you were talking about there, one off night. He's had many off nights. Like the Yoel Romero fight was one of the worst fights in UFC history. Like this Cannonier fight wasn't that bad, right? It wasn't that bad. But it was so boring and predictable. We knew what was going to happen. I literally tweeted minutes before the fight. We did a preview the other day as well, and I heard you doing your analysis, and I just said to you, Harry, is this going to be another 5-round board fest? And I did say that, didn't I? And it was. It just felt so predictable. Now, in my picks, I picked Adesanya to win by knockout. I just hoped. And that is a problem when people who go and they watch these fights like me and you know, haven't maybe half forgotten them to analyze the next fight, and then you go, oh, this is going to be boring. Well, that will start to seep into what the fans think of Adesanya. They won't think of him knocking out Paulo Costa. They won't think of him in his fights before he became a champion. They'll think of Yoel Romero and that snooze fest. They'll think of paying, if you're in America, 80 quid, 85 quid or whatever it is, to watch him school a far inferior guy in Jared Cannonier, but in the most safe and boring way possible. And I can't even remember a Vettori fight. You know, you were talking about it there. We were explaining to me before, and I've no recollection of it. And then he lays an egg against Blachowicz and loses and thinks he wins after going up in weight. It's just the problem with Adesanya is even people like me who want to like him and want to like him based off of those big fights. I don't really pay much attention to what goes on outside of the cage, honestly. He's just laying too many eggs. He really is. There's too many lackluster performances. There's too many boring performances. Now, that's lackluster and boring, maybe two different things. But to go to 4 decisions in a row and 5 out of 6 in a division, and obviously one of them was up a weight class, but in a division that's so bad. With, like, fair enough, Robert Whittaker, if you go 5 rounds of Robert Whittaker, no problem. And it's not even the decision, because we'll talk about Volkanovski in a second, because that's how you put on a demolition of someone and not make it boring. And it's not a decision. I hate that say, it goes to a decision, it's boring. I'm not, that's absolutely not what I'm saying. That if he got finishes, it would help, don't get me wrong, but put on a 5-round destruction to someone where you're styling on him for the full 5 rounds and embarrassing them. He is good enough to embarrass someone. He's a brilliant, brilliant fighter in certain ways. I actually think he's a little bit overrated, not to go fully against Adesanya or anything like that. And I think, but it takes a very certain skill set, like Liam Neeson again, I'll say it, to beat him. Someone like Blachowicz, who has good wrestling, is big, strong, and has good striking as well, even though people don't necessarily realise it. But just that overall collection of boring fights over the last while can't be good for Adesanya. And people will say to me, look at his pay-per-view buys. And I think he'd something like, and now these are obviously unofficial, but he'd something like, I think it was, his first one was against Anderson Silva and short notice was like 185,000. But then there was one like 800,000, like 500,000, 600,000, and then we'll see what last night was. So very good pay-per-view buys. But I'd be interested to see what last night was. One of them had Nate Diaz as well. And they're pandemic buys as well. The pandemic, I mused this from the very start of the pandemic, and I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like the numbers and the viewing figures will go down massively once we kind of get out of this pandemic and people go out. Like, people were sitting in their house on a Saturday night and did nothing to do. The UFC came on, they were going to buy it. So I think all of those things are kind of overinflated as well. People point to his followers, not a lot of them, and obviously in Australia and New Zealand buying pay-per-views, but I think in Australia and New Zealand, in America, like him versus Holloway, I was talking about who should be the top of the card. I think Holloway would draw more than him, but that's beside the point as well. Like, what is the key here for Adesanya? Like, we had this with Anderson Silva as well, where, you know, he had the fight out and was it Abu Dhabi or whatever it was, and who was it, Demi Maia, and then, you know, everyone was saying, oh, Dana, he's like the most boring champion of all time, and then Anderson Silva is now remembered as one of the most exciting fighters of all time and an entertainer and everything like that. It can turn around for Adesanya, but you think it will turn around for Adesanya? Or do you think, like, he is a guy who said before, and as you said earlier on, I want to show off in this fight. It just feels like he hasn't been doing that. And do you think he will show off in any fight coming up?
So again, I think, sorry, the root philosophical reason that we watch MMA will pertain as to whether you think he's an exciting fighter or not, right? Like, I vastly enjoy watching him in the Vettori fight, in the Costa fight, and in the first two and a half rounds of last night. Because from an analytical perspective, it's brilliant for me to watch him go and essentially freeze another human being with a variety of movements and then hit him and not get hit back. That to me is beautiful and brilliant, and I could watch it all day. But when that, which is his primary skill set, ceases to exist in the bout, in the match, in the fight, that's when we start having problems. Now, in answer to your question, will he? I think he could. I really think he could, because we've seen it previously. And again, to go full Sean Sheehan here, the fellas that he was stopping on his run to the title aren't that far away from the title because of the lack of depth in the middleweight division, right? So the skill level that he was going and blowing out before he got to the title isn't too dissimilar. Yes, there's a gap. Yes, there's a difference. The Costas Vettoris and the Robert Whittakers of that division are much better than your Brad Tavares and, whatever, but not drastically, right? So can he do it? Yeah, we've seen it. I think for me, the big question coming in, and I'm going to relate this to a point and ask you a question because I'm interested, is what does the Pereira fight look like? What does the Andre Muniz fight look like? Because one thing we saw with Costa is Adesanya seemed to have genuine vengeance against him, a genuine dislike for the man. And it felt like that got him up in the morning and made him want to go out and finish this fight. So when Pereira, who has a chip on his shoulder, has come in, has definitely jumped the line, right? 3 fights in, we've got a title shot, 2 fights against scrubs, 1 fight against a guy that did not execute a game plan to any straight fashion, and maybe we can talk about that at another point.
Oh, no. But if you get me into that, I'll be here for an hour. We'll go on anyway.
Fine. So, definitely jumping the line and is being pushed and pushed and pushed simply because he has 2 wins and 1 finish over Israel Adesanya. And I think the UFC understands that what Adesanya needs is a legitimate test, a legitimate rival, someone that can push him. It's not just a storyline and a method to sell pay-per-views. I think the UFC understands that division is so shallow that if you chuck to go full Sheehan, a foot boxer in small gloves into an MMA fight with Israel Adesanya, we might see something special, right? But my question to you is, in terms of Cannonier and potentially Pereira, even if they're outmatched from a skill perspective, how much is it on them to go and try and take the fight to Israel Adesanya?
I saw a lot of people saying that, and that's a fair argument, but like you could say it's on Romero, it's on Costa, it's on Blachowicz, it's on Vettori, it's on Whittaker, it's on Cannonier. Yeah, but they all fought Adesanya, and that is the key, I think, to that one. And I think the Pereira fight's a very interesting one because, okay, it could turn into a kickboxing match, but very interesting in terms of what I'm about to say, right? Will Adesanya go in and try to take him down and wrestle him for 5 rounds? Like, that will prove if Adesanya is a boring so-and-so or not. Because if he does that, and maybe it's wise to do that, and maybe it's the matchup he should do it in, but there's been 5 matchups beforehand where he's played the safe game as well. And, I don't mind playing the safe game until you do it so many times and you talk so much about being the best and the one that shows off and the guy that's light years ahead of him. And you are light years ahead of a lot of these guys. If it was just Pereira, fair enough. It was just Whittaker, fair enough. But the fact it's all the guys that are massively underneath him as well, I think that's the biggest problem. Go on, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, my only question to that, though, is would your opinion change if he goes in, maybe does a little bit of foot boxing, takes Pereira down, passes, takes his back and submits him in 3 minutes?
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be fun. But I'm not, I'm not biased for or against grappling or striking, whatever it might be. If you can have an exciting, finishing, effective grappling or striking match, no problem with that at all. Yeah, no, I've no problem with that. But the problem with it is, right? You could say he could do that, right? If he has a jiu-jitsu or wrestling advantage over Pereira. Maybe he doesn't, but it seemed like he might, right? Let's say if he does that, if it was the same but the other way around in terms of Izzy has the striking advantage on the feet, which we have seen in many fights, he is basically taking them down and John Fitching them, but on the feet. You know, he's the John Fitch of striking. That's what he is. He just blankets you on the feet for 5 rounds and guys who are far inferior to him. Is that hard? That's very harsh. But that's what it is. That's what it's brilliant. But John Fitch taking someone down and absolutely blanking them is brilliant as well. That do you know how hard that is to do? To hold a grown man down for 25 minutes. That's exceptional. Just like what Adesanya does is exceptional. But by God, it's boring. By God, it's boring. We have to come on here and say it's boring. Not as boring as John Fitch, but can I just, one last thing, because we're running out of time here for the last 5-10 minutes or however long it takes. Can I ask you, because I was thinking last night, right? I watched the Volkanovski Holloway fight, and that was a destructive one-sided win. And then I watched the Adesanya Cannonier fight. That was a lot less one-sided, I would say. Like, Cannonier wasn't that far from winning that fight, and that might sound weird, but those rounds were just so close that one big blow on 2 of them and he would have won the fight. Literally, he would have won the fight. You say in the first and the fourth. I think he won the third on 2 judges' scorecards, if I'm not mistaken. But having said that anyway, it was a closer fight than the destruction in that. Yet, everyone came out of the Volkanovski-Holloway fight saying, man, Volkanovski's unbelievable. Not necessarily saying it was a great fight, but weren't saying it was a bad fight either. And we come out of the Volkanovski or the Adesanya fight and going, that was a snoozer. Adesanya is not the star we thought. He's not an exciting fighter at all. Why do you think? What is the difference there? Is it as simple as, you know, it's one guy fighting a really good guy and one guy fighting a not so good guy? Or is there something different between Volkanovski and Adesanya?
I think it goes back to the point that we made at the start. If Alexander Volkanovski was fighting anyone that wasn't named Max Holloway, he'd have finished that fight. We saw just the absolute scaffold, raw brick material foundation of Max Holloway in that fight. He is a very, very tough man. He's never been dropped in the UFC, and how he hasn't been dropped in the UFC boggles my mind with some of the hitters that he's been in with. But he took an insatiable amount of damage in that fight, wasn't wobbled, wasn't rocked, wasn't dropped, and just kept pressuring, kept walking forward, kept on his game plan. Now, Volkanovski was pursuing excellence and dominance, but trying to lead to a clinical finish. Max Holloway just didn't let him, right? So I think that the reason why we come out of that saying, good Lord, Alexander Volkanovski is an unbelievable fighter, was one, because we found out afterwards he broke his hand in the first exchange of the first round and still jabbed the face off Max Holloway. But also because we saw evolution. We saw evolution that was entirely trying to lead towards a clinical and decisive finish to the contest. Adesanya wasn't looking to find a clinical and decisive finish to the match. And I think that at the root of all things, that's what fans want. Yes, they like the competitive and they like the this and they like the whole charade of a war and the attrition and everything. And I get it. But I think that if a fight is happening without the notion of trying to lead to a clinical and dominant finish, that's where fans are upset. And Alexander Volkanovski for 25 minutes was trying to send Max Holloway to the Shadow Realm, but Max just refused to go.
Do you know what? I think you've hit that there, and I think that's a good place to end it, because that is exactly it. I think that's exactly the whole point of why I asked you to come on and do this today, and you have hit the nail on the head. And that is the difference between Adesanya and Volkanovski. That's why people loved the Volkanovski performance and didn't like the Adesanya performance. So we will leave it there. If you enjoyed this, let us know in the comment section below. We might do more of them. I think to give it a few hours to kind of let it settle, break it down for more of a nuanced position maybe is a good thing to do. I was still steaming mad when I came on Sunday morning. I just started ranting. So this is a little bit better, hopefully. We will leave it at that. If you want to follow Harry, absolutely do it again. BJJ Harry Powell. Listen to the one man boot. He's over on SevereMMA all the time with lots of different podcasts over there on the Patreon as well. And he's a great article. Who's your article on this week, Harry? Who's the Monday morning article on?
Jalen Turner.
Oh, that's an interesting. I know you're a big fan of his. SevereMMA.com there as well on a Monday morning to look at the next batch of prospects coming through in the world of mixed martial arts. Harry, thank you very much for your time. Thank you to everybody for listening. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.